Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the third turn of the Shadowtech Goddess Stenibelle. I apologize if my voice sounds a little hoarse. I've got some sort of sinus infection, and no, it's not the coof. I don't have the coof. I've never had the coof, and I probably cursed myself to get the coof. It's just a sinus infection, plain old run-of-the-mill thing. My nose is running, my sinuses are all messed up. Oh well, que sera. In our previous chapter, Stenibelle heads down into Hold 4 at the bottom of the ship, where the sinister doings within could come to the light. She discovers the punts in there, working in army ant-like precision, squeezing the crew, the ones who are left, of Shadowtech that's formed inside their body. They're then feeding the Shadowtech to this giant-sized statue of the Shadowtech goddess who's standing like in a well or a basin, and her feet are submerged in Shadowtech. And their hope is that the statue of the Shadowtech goddess will unearth the coordinates to Camera, but of course, as we know, its statue does not know the coordinates to Camera. It's Melazar of Caroline who knows the coordinates, but that doesn't mean the statue has some arcane things going on with it. While investigating the hold, the door is open. In comes one of our main bad guys, Rem Deckard, with Julia of Fountainlock, a toothless waif Stenibelle had kinda sort of befriended. Rem Deckard is pissed that Julia didn't capture Stenibelle previously, is angered by her incompetence, and as she's just a K-lister who's eminently expendable, Rem Deckard tosses her in to get sacrificed to the punts and the statue of the Shadowtech goddess Stenibelle, who only has 2 brown holy stones left, and these holy stones she intended to get herself and Melazar of Caroline off the ship back to Planetfall. Hears Julia's screams as the punts strip her bare and begin preparing her to receive Shadowtech. She cries out for her mother, and Stenibelle is unable to hear these cries without taking action, even though it's going to inconvenience her extremely. So she only has 2 brown holy stones left. If she uses one on Julia, that means she only has 1 left. My math is impeccable, and I'm pretty sure on this point, and her plans would be ruined. But Stenibelle just can't bear to listen to Julia's cries, so she saves her, sends her away back to Planetfall. And then the punts come at her and start infecting her with Shadowtech, and she quickly succumbs to it. It's not really something you can fight against. It's like poison being pumped into your body. She takes refuge near the statue, and lo and behold, when she nears it, the statue starts to move, and it picks her up in its giant-sized palm and lifts her into the air. She waves up her final holy stone, but near unconsciousness, she drops it, and it's lost forever down there in the dirt that the punts got going on. And that's where we left off. This week, chapter 11, Captured. And we only have 4 chapters left, and then Stenibelle will be done. We will be done. So, let's proceed immediately. I can't wait to find out what happens to our plucky heroine Stenibelle. Chapter 11, Captured. Her mind was in a chaos place on the verge of delirium. She saw herself as a different person, a tall person standing on a wind-whipped cliff, overlooking a vast valley overgrown with virgin trees and patches of ancient grass as far as the eye could see. A slender pair of arms came around her, holding her tight. A platinum watch sat on the right wrist. "Come on, Belle. Let's find some shelter." "Gwen?" Something touched her, and she was returned into her body. When Stenibelle opened her eyes, she was no longer in the hold. Gone were the dim lighting and the smothering blanket of earth. Gone were the punts and the giant-sized statue. Instead, bright lights coming down from above blinded her, and the delicate fragrance of tea simmering tickled her nose. Quiet music played. Something fibrous and pine-scented was stuck in her mouth. She reached up to try to remove the foreign object from her mouth, but failed. She couldn't move her arms. She was shackled to a wooden chair with thick manacles. The attached chains trailed down around the back of the chair, wrapping around her boots. Her HRN was gone. Her vuncula was gone along with the rest of her weapons. The Unimind, where was it? To her left was a row of windows, cheery and sea-like, filled with a glittering curtain of stars. To her right was a paneled wall. A black arcane box the size of a large birdcage sat quietly near the windows. It was Rodrigo of Burgon's mysterious Trempelar box. She appeared to be captive in the luxurious upper levels of the ship, the poison V-Trax gas gone. Bolted to the wall was some sort of hermetic pressure capsule with a hatch large enough for a person to enter. It was hulking and brutish in design, painted a heavy-duty white and deeply scratched from use. It didn't look like something belonging on a fleet ship. Nearby, a large wardrobe on wheels sat innocently by the windows. It bore the initials RB in hammered lettering, no doubt for Rodrigo of Burgon. She felt terribly sick. Her entire body hurt. Whatever was stuffed into her mouth, she gagged on it. A pair of soft hands came to her face. There was Melazar of Caroline before her, on her knees, her yellowy lion's eyes fixed and clouded with drugs. Her expression was blank, slightly confused. Stenibelle tried to speak, but the wooden device in her mouth prevented her from saying anything. Melazar gently caressed her cheek and lightly touched her ears. Melazar's touch was electric and distracting, rather like Morgan's cold touch that had driven her insane with bliss. Only Melazar's was gentle and warm. Stenibelle tested her shackles and they were solid. She waved up a lockpick and maneuvered it into position to get at the lock. The lock was behind her back. She couldn't see what type of lock it was. She would simply have to use what she had and hope for the best. Though shackled, she wondered at her good fortune. Here was Melazar, the very woman she needed to complete her mission. Now, if only she could get free and take Melazar before anybody else entered. She searched for the lock, nimbly testing the chains with her pick. Too late. A nearby door opened, and through it came the first officer, Lieutenant Rem Deckard. Rem Deckard. Extremely dangerous, came the Cyril. What are you doing? She said in an angry voice as she surveyed the situation. Get away! She thundered up and kicked Melazar to the floor. She groaned in vague pain. Deckard put her oversized fleet boot on her neck and pressed down hard. Melazar choked and turned blue. She slowly kicked and thrashed about. Stenibelle worked furiously, searching for the mechanism. She had to free herself and help Melazar. Rem Deckard noticed Stenibelle struggling. Oh, awake, are you? She hauled back and kicked her in the chest, knocking her over. Stenibelle wheezed and almost dropped her lockpick. She held on tight. Deckard reached down and seized Stenibelle by the neck. Stenibelle felt the hand at her throat get hot, blazing hot, excruciating, as if her hand were made of molten lead. Her skin was burning. Screaming like a child, Melazar rose up and beat Rem Deckard in the back, flailing away with her fists. The blows sounded hard. Deckard released Stenibelle and put both hands on Melazar's face, driving her into the floor. She gibbered in agony. Her headband started smoking as if ready to catch fire. It fell off her head. Feeling the soft glow of rage form within her, Stenibelle found the locking mechanism and began working it. Another few moments and she should be out, and then she, unarmed, would come to grips with Rem Deckard. She's not human, Willard had said. She didn't think she had enough to beat Deckard without her weapons, but she had to try, for Melazar and for her house. The door opened and Rodrigo of Burgon and Captain Duval entered, along with a crewman pushing a cart. The crewman loaded numerous items from the cart onto a table and then departed. Burgon saw what was happening and his eyes flared with anger. "Unhand my tropist and never touch her again, or I shall open my deadly box and allow you to be consumed." Deckard released Melazar, drawing her ugly knife from her coat. "Go ahead, open your box. I want to see what's in there. Go ahead." "Lieutenant," Captain Duval said, nonplussed, "be at ease and show a bit of courtesy to our Zappin guest. His bitch was helping the prisoner escape." Burgon offered a greasy smile. "She is no prisoner. This lovely woman is our guest." "Whatever. Your tropist was pawing her like a monkey, and I didn't like it." Burgon picked up Melazar's headband and neatly placed it back on her head. "There, there," he said to her in a gentle voice. "My tropist is topped off with a cocktail of euphoriants, keeping her in a sedate state. She could do no such thing." Deckard stood fast for a moment and glanced at Burgon's sinister black box. Then she put her knife away and stepped back. Burgon assisted Melazar to a nearby couch, where she resumed her uncomfortable trance-like position. Despite being a Zaffin warlord and a cannibal, he seemed to treat Melazar with a fair amount of tenderness. "Now then," he said, "let us look over our guest." He approached Stenibelle and righted her chair. He gazed at her with his microsecond handsome piggy face. "Ah, awake at last, I see. The shadow tech my friends were kind enough to pump into your flesh has been neutralized. The wood from the Kentrala tree absorbs shadow tech nicely." He pulled a wooden bit out of her mouth and examined it. Satisfied, he tossed it aside. "The threat of poisoning is gone. You are safe." The captain fetched a cup of tea and seated himself. Rem Deckard stood next to him. "So what did you find? Anything?" Burgon asked. "Did you find the substance she drugged us with?" "Found lots of things," Deckard stated flatly. On the table behind Deckard was Stenibelle's kit, her HRN, her vuncula, and her other assorted accessories. Deckard rummaged through her items. She was armed with a Grenville .40 pistol that had been recently fired, a very well-made vuncula with a Hoban War Club tip, and an old Hoban Royal Navy coat full of a number of novel accessories I'm still sorting through. Our friend here seems to be a would-be alchemist. I've no doubt, given the chemicals she plied us with earlier. "Where did she get a vuncula from?" Duval asked. "She's no Grenville. I know all of the Grenvilles. She looks more like an Esther woman to me. Small, nice, serviceable hips, pretty face. She probably bedded somebody for it." "Was it Giron?" "Ah, it was, wasn't it? He has a weakness for Esther beauties." Stenibelle didn't answer, but he was correct. Giron of Grenville had taught her the vuncula's use. "Belle, you are the most beautiful woman I have ever known. I'd wear 1,000 vunculas, as if only to embrace you with all of them." Rem Deckard held up the small, shiny form of the Unimind. "She also had this. It's some sort of communications device." "What information did you steal with this?" Stenibelle felt her heart skip a beat. She remained silent. "Well then, look." Rem Deckard's hand became red hot. The Unimind began glowing. "Don't destroy it, Lieutenant. It might contain valuable information," Duval said. "We'll hack in and decipher it later." Deckard relented and set it down on the table. "Who are you working for? How did you get aboard this ship?" Deckard demanded. Nothing. Silence. Rem Deckard became impatient. "So, why is this person up here and not in a container growing fat in the hold with shadow tech? You need females? Well, here's one. Leave her to her fate. That's the price of being a spy." Burgon took exception. "Because, ignorant woman from Mora, the statue moved in her presence. That is what we have been working for, laboring for. Life from the statue. The statue is a Merton. It carries messages from the universe. We have failed thus far with shadow tech, yet this woman succeeded merely with her presence. This woman is our key to Camera." Merton, Stenibelle mused. Aram and Alesta had also used the term Merton, some sort of herald bearing the universe's news. An extraplanar entity. Burgon seemed to have his extraplanar concepts down, but he had badly misidentified the Merton. It wasn't the statue in the hold. It was Melazar of Caroline sitting right next to him, half naked in a trance. Fortunately, the truth evaded him, and he seemed confident in his faulty knowledge. That, at least, was working in her favor. Deckard picked up a report and looked it over. Really? Her name is Stenibelle, 30th daughter, House of Belmont, South Tyrol. So you were right, Captain, she is an Esther. She was formerly a fleet paymaster serving aboard the warbird New Faith. The House of Tyrol is known on Cana for practicing sorcery, Duval added. I've read about that. Sorcery? That could be significant, Burgon said. I don't see how, Deckard said. This little elf bought the chair of the old fleet ship Seeker before it got smelted down last year. But she didn't last long. She was remanded into custody for violating sea lanes, for assaulting a fleet yardmaster, and for general incompetence of command. She was paneled, thrown on the bag, and then was sentenced to 10 years in Hagthorpe Prison. According to our records, she was recently released from prison on a rights technicality. Deckard put the report down. Like I said, she doesn't seem much to me. Your thoughts are noted, Lieutenant. However, the statue moved in her presence. We all saw it, and there can be no doubt. That is the sign we have been looking for, Burgon said. Well then, let's get her back down there and get the statue going. What are we waiting for? Burgon would not be rushed. Have a bit of patience, will you? I want to understand what we are dealing with first. Burgon approached her, sizing her up like a show animal. Lady Stenibelle, can you speak? Stenibelle stayed quiet. Rem Deckard thundered forward and wrenched her head back. He asked you a question, you prison slut Johnny-wag. Talk! Nothing. Deckard pointed at the scratched-up white capsule bolted to the wall. You see that? It's a custom edition. We call it the Hatch. That's where we sent out all the male crew members. We couldn't use the airlocks. All of their activity is archived and monitored at the fleet. We can, however, use the Hatch all we want. We just marched them in and put them out like so much garbage. Your friend, what's his name? Your K-lister accomplice? Tried it out not long ago. So do you care to follow him? Willard of Falconer was dead. Spaced. He hadn't seemed like such a bad fellow. Maybe all he needed was a sympathetic ear, a pep talk, a kick in the rear, and possibly a second chance. She herself had needed those things not long ago, and had people who cared enough to give them to her. Now he was gone, his body never to be found. He hadn't deserved that. She grieved for him, a sob escaping her lips. Oh, what's the matter, hun? Scared, Deckard said. Burgon was annoyed with Deckard's tactics. Are you certain you're not a Zaffin, Lieutenant? You seem to have a propensity for hasty decisions and rash, violent acts. Very Zaffin-like. We are not putting her out the ship, he said. Now please, step back and be seated. I shall attend here. Deckard smiled. She took a small breath of air and blew into Stenibelle's face. Very quickly, the heat of her breath became scorching, became unbearable, like dragon's breath. Stenibelle was being burned by Deckard's breath, as if there were a raging furnace within her. Stenibelle's face red, Deckard snickered and seated herself near the captain. I am sorry for that, Burgon said to Stenibelle. I'll wager there hasn't been a moment in your life when you thought a Zaffin warlord would be your greatest advocate and defender. Now then, what do you know of the Shadowtech goddess? Anything? Have you studied her in your sorceress learnings? Shall I tell you? The Shadowtech goddess is a fabled spirit, a deity, if you will. Her role is to serve as the universe's protector and sentinel. She determines who lives and who dies. She punishes those seeking to circumvent the universal scheme. In some places where her services are not required, she is a simple mortal woman living an unremarkable life. In others, where she is needed, she is a destroyer sitting on her iron throne in the places between all things. When she emerges from her hidden place, nothing is left but Shadowtech. They say it bleeds from her womb, and she is its mother. Shadowtech, despite its apparent destructive power, is the basis of life. Just like a raging fire that leaves a blackened forest ripe for regrowth, what the Shadowtech destroys is fertile ground for the recreation of life, just waiting for someone to come and give it proper shape. We in Punt intend to be the progenitors of a new universe built in our design, shaped to our specifications, where we are the gods. We have been planning for centuries how our universe shall evolve. Oh, it will be glorious, stunning, unimaginable. All we need is to bring the Shadowtech goddess forth and let her do her work. But that task has not been easy. She sits just beyond our reach. We've tried everything. We've sacrificed millions. We've sullied twicefold. We've sung, we've danced, we've beaten our drums and burned whole civilizations to the ground, and still she will not come. We, however, will not be denied. Our sages recently discovered an ancient wisdom regarding our mistress. We discovered we had been coming at this problem wrong-footed, that all that killing and burning and debauching was for nothing. Our mistress is beyond those things. We discovered the existence of a forgotten shrine in a faraway place. The shrine, according to our research, is a cursed place, inhabited by a lonesome demon. But also within the shrine is a wondrous key known in the learned circles as the Anatameter. Anatameter. The name rang through her and struck deep. It was a word she knew, had heard many times. Aram and Alesta had mentioned it. She had also heard the name, but not with her ears. Other versions of herself had heard it, had struggled with it, had held it in their hands. Burgon saw her react. Yes, the name rings with you, doesn't it? All we need do is go to the shrine and turn the Anatameter's knob, and then there is the Shadowtech goddess just a short walk away. Duval shrugged and set his teacup down. Yes, but we don't know the way to the shrine, do we, Burgon? With you, everything's a dead end. Burgon flushed with anger. If all this was easy, it would have been done long ago, wouldn't it? And to correct you, Sir Captain, we are not at a dead end. It is a 4-step process. The statue knows the way to Camera. The gods of Camera know the way to the shrine. We go to the shrine, we turn the knob at the Anatameter, then we go to the Shadowtech goddess. First things first, the statue must tell us the way to Camera. He turned back to Stenibelle. The great Merton statue you gave life to in the hold, we stole it from an old goddess temple in Ming Moorland, where she was said to perform miracles, given the correct circumstances. She knows the way to the gods of Camera. Burgon paused and regarded her, looking for insight. So why her? Duval asked. Why is she special? Why did the statue move? Let us find out. Burgon went to his wardrobe and opened it. Inside was a collection of arcane accessories, rare fabrics, and stacks of vellum. Let us find out right now. Burgon rummaged through his wardrobe and pulled out several items of Zaffin design. He washed them with scented oil poured from a jug. Stenibelle glanced at Melazar, sitting silent nearby, not having moved a muscle. Her throat was slightly swollen from Deckard's boot. Melazar is the Merton, not the bloody statue. He returned with his freshly oiled implements and inspected Stenibelle with them, running them up and down her body, getting oil on her shirt. I'm sorry I dirtied your shirt. We shall soon get you out of these clothes and into something more flattering for a lady such as yourself. He mumbled with interest. What have you discovered? Duval asked. He performed more tests. Burgon. He went to his wardrobe and pulled a creaky old book from the lower shelves. He opened it and leafed through pages. He took his time. He found what he wanted and traced through the text with his finger. He smiled, set the book aside, and put his things away. We are in rare company, Captain, he announced. Lady Stenibelle is a Kadargamane. He stood there, smiling, considering the possibilities. He opened and closed his fists in excitement. "What's that?" Rem Deckard asked. "Whore in Zaffin?" "Hardly. It means she is an extraplanar entity, exceedingly rare. Extraplanar entities are beings who hold a special place in the universe. They are those who may break the bonds of space and time. In some cases, they are the living pulse of the universe. They enjoy the universe's favor. In some cases, they bear messages from the universe that only the wise and the diligent can read. Our statue in the hold is a Merton, an extraplanar entity. The Kadargamane is the greatest of the lot. She exists in every universe. There is not one where she is not present. That is unheard of." "So?" Deckard said flatly. "Yes, Burgon, what does this mean?" Duval asked. Burgon muttered to himself in an odd tongue. It means our gateway to the gods of Camera is soon to be open. A Kadargamane is a creature of immense power. With Lady Stenibelle at our side, portals open, old gateways become active, and locked doors in hidden places unlock. She breathes life into that which is lifeless, and the statue lives in her presence. And now a Kadargamane has fallen square into my lap." "Our lap, you mean?" Duval said. "So if I'm reading you correctly, our mission is complete? We no longer need to harvest shadow tech?" "That is incorrect. The harvesting must continue until we stand on Camera. We must have a gift to offer the gods. Casks flowing with shadow tech shall do nicely." Burgon was fascinated by Stenibelle. He closely examined her face, poked and prodded her, and tested her chains. "I wish her released." Duval didn't react. "She stays where she is," Deckard replied. "After we've secured our latest offering, I shall allow her to be released under heavy sedation," Duval said. "And into my custody, yes?" Burgon said. "Into our joint custody. She is just as much mine as she is yours, and more so mine as you stand on my ship, under my guns." Duval stood and approached, giving Stenibelle an evasive glance in his Remnath fashion. "Are you certain this woman is something special? She looks like a standard Esther girl to me. She is pretty, certainly, but there are many pretty girls from Esther. How did you come to this conclusion?" Burgon went to his wardrobe and fetched an empty picture frame from the clanking curtains of junk within. He returned and held it up in front of Stenibelle. Faces appeared in the frame, a multitude of them, a never-ending parade of them. "This is her in her infinite guises as Kadargamane. And look!" Burgon cried. "In every other universe she is a man. How remarkable!" "Does that mean anything?" "Only that we are privy to the most lovely aspect of this extraplanar entity. With our Lady Stenibelle here, it shall be we who dictate the terms in the court of Mons Eagle on Camera. The gods will hear our discourse." He came in and took her by the chin and whispered, "You shall be my constant consort. With you at my side, nothing is out of bounds. We may have whatever we want. You shall never be far from my side again." Stenibelle gurgled a little. She was mostly acting, lulling Burgon into thinking she was insensate. She could have her lock picked at any time. She had to be careful and choose her moment to strike carefully. Burgon fished through his wardrobe and pulled out a small brazier, an onyx jug, and a stout metal brand. Behind Stenibelle, Melazar stirred a little. She could feel Melazar's eyes fixed on her. Muh, she muttered, breathless. No, not now. She might speak the secret, and then Burgon would realize his mistake, and he would have it, and she could not allow that. "Shut your tropist up, Burgon," Deckard said. "I'll put my boot down her throat again." Melazar stood on her long legs and tottered about in a daze, heading towards Burgon's wardrobe. As she passed Stenibelle, her fingers brushed her wrist. The touch was magnetic, doing all sorts of naughty things within her body, arousing her. She pulled out a roll of vellum and a marker. Burgon approached and gently put his arms around her. There, there, he said. He returned her to her pillow and seated her. Seated, Melazar began furiously scribbling on the vellum, the marker flying across the page. She mumbled over and over. She was drawing a chart to camera. Stenibelle could see it. What is she doing? Duval asked. Burgon was busy setting up his brazier. He glanced at the markings she was making on the vellum, but dismissed them as mere scribbles. Nothing. Just random drawings. She does them on occasion. The drugs I give her tend to make her rather childlike and insensate. They are meaningless. Stenibelle could not let them discover the import of Melazar's drawing. Just then the comm rang in. "Sir," came a voice from the bridge. "What is it?" Duval replied. "We are approaching the Gilman slot." "Ah," Duval said, "at last. Have we located our promised catch for the day?" "Aye, sir. 6,000 kVs and closing." "Bring us in and disable the vessel. Prepare a docking party. Full salvage rights are in effect." "Just a moment. We'll be right there." He put his teacup aside and stood. "Lieutenant, would you please take command on the bridge and supervise the taking of our quarry? I don't trust this K-Lister lot." "Aye." She turned and exited the door. "And nor should you, Captain," Burgon said. "Vulgar, the lot of them." He mixed chemicals, and a bluish fire jumped about in the brazier pan and sizzled. Rem Deckard's voice came in from the comm a few moments later. "Captain, we have a visual on the Zaffin ship. Looks to be an old Mercy, too. She's seen us and is running." Captain Duval smirked. "Is she? Oh, what are we to do, I wonder? We certainly can't match sails with a 100-year-old Zaffin Mercy, too, can we?" "Get them, Lieutenant. These K-Lister lot need their salvage and a pint of blood, don't they? Catch that ship and let us feast hearty." "Aye." "And then it is time. We shall make sail for Zaffin space. I am ready to begin our journey to Camera." "We don't have the data just yet," Burgon said. "But we will. Our little Kadar Gemain will get it for us, yes?" Duval wandered over to Melazar and watched her work. She was leaning over, babbling slightly, scratching hard on the vellum. "I'm curious what she's doing, Burgon. She seems to be working with conviction and intent." Burgon opened his jug and poured a thick pearly liquid into the fire, followed by his brand, allowing it to get hot. "I told you it was nothing." "It doesn't look like nothing to me. It looks like she's composing a detailed stellar chart." "What?" Stenibelle had to do something to divert their attention. Her sister Elma had a habit of screaming when she wanted attention, uttering a heart-stopping, blood-curdling, ear-busting scream that could be heard from one end of Belmont Manor to the next. Stenibelle opened her mouth and screamed as loud as she could, getting her lungs into it. Both Burgon and Captain Duval were put off. "Gods, what is wrong with her?" Duval asked. "Perhaps your thug first officer injured her." He patted her shoulder. "Be calm. I'll have you out of this chair in no time. Just have to take care of one small thing first." The fire in his brazier popped. The brand began to glow. Rem Deckard's voice came back down over the comm. "Sir, we are unable to capture the Zaffin ship." Duval turned to the comm in frustration. "Impossible. There is no ship type in the Zaffin Armada that a Sprint-class ship such as ours can't outrun, especially an Elder-down Mercy II." "They are doing it, sir. We are at full sub-SM rotations and losing ground. Tuck in and catch that ship, Lieutenant." "Aye." Melazar finished the drawing. She sat back. Map to camera," she mumbled. "What was that, dearie?" Duval asked. "Say again?" Stenibelle screamed again, trying to capture his attention. "Map to camera!" Melazar screeched. "Map to camera!" Duval stepped over to Melazar. He pulled the vellum roll away from her and looked at it. He sucked in his breath. "Burgon, this is a very detailed stellar chart. Look! There are meridians and vectors. I recognize these constellations and other stellar bodies. There are proper declinations and ascensions. There are reference points, tables, and conversions to AM and PM." He gasped. "This is a chart to camera at long last." Burgon pulled the metal brand out of the fire. It was sizzling hot. Is it? How is it she knows the way to camera? She knows nothing of such things. She is my tropist, that is all. Duval stood there holding the chart. Or perhaps you've miscalculated. It wouldn't be the first time, would it? Perhaps she is one of these extraplanar beings you mentioned. They do seem to be coming out of the woodwork at the moment. He looked at the flaming brand in Burgon's hand. What are you doing with that? I'm going to brand Lady Stenibelle with my chastity key. She will never be far from my side again. Then we can have a look at this silly drawing my tropist made. Burgon moved toward Stenibelle, his brand steaming. A Zaphan Kabbalist symbol was embossed at the tip. Now, help me lift her chin a little. I'm aiming for the base of her neck. Stenibelle moved in a flash. She sprung the lock and surged from the chair, surprising Burgon with the speed of her attack. She waved up 3 Marzible daggers and slashed at him. He dropped his brand in shock. Calm, the prisoner has escaped! Duval cried, backing away. V-Trax, deck 2 immediately! She faded into the shadows and came at Duval, hoping to snatch the chart away from him. He backed away, holding it tight and drawing his Mims pistol. V-Trax to deck now! A sweet-smelling pinkish gas snaked in through several vents. Where did she go? Burgon roared. Faded and invisible, Stenibelle moved fast. She didn't have long until the V-Trax gas incapacitated her. She grabbed her vuncula off the table and quickly strapped it on, cinching the buckle, feeling the metal tail come to life. Puck! Puck! Duval popped off a few shots in her direction, bad misses. Duval came in. What are you doing? Don't shoot! You might kill her! Lady Stenibelle, stop! I cannot protect you if you try to escape. Be reasonable! Where are you to go? She responded by savagely smashing him in the cheek with the vuncula, the blow sending him flying to the ground. His Tremplar box shuddered with eager movement, waiting to open up. She seized the box with her vuncula and stuffed it into the hatch. She pulled the lever, the hatch closed, and the box was flushed out into open space, floating past the window and was gone. The gas was filling the room. She had to get out. She seized the Unimind and her HRN and took Melazar by the wrist, jerking her along. Melazar limply followed, her bare feet slapping on the tiles, her eyes vacant. She was like a giant child, barely aware of what was happening around her. Stenibelle tried the door. Locked, just like before, the chastity key branded into Melazar's flesh was hindering her exit. The thought that she was only seconds away from being branded herself made her shudder. Pock! Pock! More shots from Duval, putting tiny holes through the door. The gas was becoming too much. She coughed. She smashed through the door with several hammer blows from the vuncula. The door broke in two. She fled out into the corridor with Melazar, bewildered and gangly at her side. She barricaded the door with the table as she exited. She knew the lifts would be locked down by now, so she used her Cyril Cone information. Ahead was J-34, a maintenance tube that headed down 2 decks. She opened it, threw Melazar in, and crawled in after her. Closing it up, she heard Burgon and Duval surge into the corridor, along with a third voice, Rem Deckard's. What happened? I knew it! She roared. That little bitch! Leading the way, she twisted and turned through the tight passages, pulling Melazar along. She smiled slightly, as if playing a game. Somehow, they managed to escape from Deck 2 and its toxic gas and retreat to the lower decks. And with that, we conclude Chapter 11, Captured. So Stenibelle is captured from Hold 4, brought up to Deck 2, manacled to a chair, and removed of all her stuff, and then interrogated. Of all our pantheon of bad guys, we got Captain Duval, we have Rem Deckard, and then Rodrigo of Burgon. Rodrigo of Burgon, even though he's a Zaphan warlord and a cannibal, he doesn't seem to be a vicious or cruel person in this universe anyways. He seems to treat Melazar with a semblance of kindness, and he was being fairly kind to Stenibelle as well, protecting her from the wrath of Rem Deckard, who really wanted to put a beating on her. He discovers that she is a Kadar Gamain, and that ancient doorways and ancient passages will open up in her presence, and he's convinced that the statue in the hold will give them the route to Camera. Meanwhile, Melazar, under her drug state, grabs a piece of paper, essentially, and scribbles out the map to camera. Very inconvenient. Captain Duval sees it for what it is and takes it. And then, just as Burgon was about to brand Stenibelle with a chastity key right on her neck, she springs her lock, knocks Burgon to the ground with her vuncula as she reattaches it around her waist, grabs her HRN, and grabs Melazar just as the deck starts filling up with poison gas, and they escape the deck via some crawl tubes. Very interesting chapter. Stenibelle, just through the course of talking to these three, discovers that Willard of Falconer had been killed. He had been put out the hatch, and Stenibelle, even though she didn't knew him very well, obviously, she just met the guy, she still grieved for his loss, didn't find him to be a bad person, that maybe he just needed a second chance, and now he's dead and his body will never be found, never be buried, never be mourned over. So she took it upon herself to mourn for him, just the kind of person she is. So Stenibelle escapes with Melazar in tow, and we will see how this crazy story continues next week. Chapter 12, Ambush. We only have a few chapters left, so things are going to start heating up quickly. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I am your host, Ren. Peace out.